So I have never given a graduation speech before, and I was told when I asked about doing it for advice, and they said, short, keep it short. So I thought a lot about what I really thought would be helpful to all of you who are about to go out there, and not know what's going to happen. And you could say that's true for all of us, right? No one ever knows what's going to happen. But these transition times between something being set, like you are a student at Naropa, and you had that to come back to each year, and it was sort of set, and for a certain number of you, even your rent and your tuition and things were paid for, although I know a lot of you actually had to take out loans and work hard before you came here in order to be able to come here. But in any case, now what? Will you be able to get a job? Big question. What's it going to be like to try to support yourself without any help from anybody? It's a good question. And I was shown a cover of a book from the 80s, 1980s, called What Are You Going to Do After College? That was the title of the book. And on the cover of it was this a man graduating in cap and gown, and he was like looking out like full of promise, and he was stepping into this vortex that went down. And I thought, gosh, that's pretty accurate, and that was in the 80s, It sort of reminds me of like when I first was taught to teach. It was here in Boulder, actually. I was working at what's now the Shambhala Center, and I was being taught how to teach, as many of us were. And the instructions I got were prepare well, know your subject, and then go in there with no note cards. And honestly, that's the best advice for life. No note cards. Just prepare well, intend to know what you want to do, give it your best, but you really don't have a clue what's going to happen. So they asked me for the topic of my talk, and I decided not to give it to them because I thought if I did, they wouldn't let me do it. Whoever they are, but. And so it's inspired by a quote from Samuel Beckett, and it goes like this. Go, Samuel Beckett. He knew something about waiting with no note cards, right? So the quote is, fail, fail again, fail better. And I thought, if there's one skill that is not stressed very much, but is really needed, is knowing how to fail well. The fine art of failing. There's a lot of emphasis on succeeding. And whether we buy the hype or not, we all kind of want to succeed in the sense, like if you consider success just as it works out the way I want it to. It feels good in the gut and in the heart because it worked out. So failing by that definition is it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. And that is what we don't usually get a lot of preparation for, but I think in college, university, as graduates and undergraduates, if there's one thing that prepares you for having some idea about how to work with the rawness of things not working out the way we want them to, it would be contemplative education. Because as I listened to all the other speakers, I reinforced what I already thought was true, which was that you've gotten a lot of instruction and encouragement and support for feeling how things impact you and not just going down the tubes with it, but actually taking responsibility for what's happening to you and somehow having some tools about how to work with painful feelings, raw feelings. So fail again, fail better. It's like how to get good at holding the rawness of vulnerability in your heart. How to get good at welcoming the unwelcome. That's a quote actually from the founder of PassageWorks, which brings contemplative education into elementary schools. But welcoming the unwelcome, how to actually get good at that. That, I think, is, if you just even remember the Beckett quote, from anything that I say, I think it's what will help you more than anything else in the next 6 months, the next year, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, for as long as you live until you drop dead. So how to fail? Well, one of the things I want to say about failure, along with that it feels very raw, let me say this about failure before I digress into saying something else about failure. I think the most significant thing about it is we usually think of it as things that happen to us from the outside, right? Like, we can't get in a relationship, or we're in a good relationship that ends painfully, or we can't get a job, or we're fired from the job we have, or we don't get the grades we want, or any number of not getting things the way we want them to be, that we think of failure as like something that happens to us. So there's usually two ways that we deal with that. We usually either blame it on somebody else or the organization or something, our boss or our partner or whatever. We move away from the rawness of holding the rawness of vulnerability in our heart by blaming it on the other. And the other really common thing, which is probably inherent in whatever approach we take, is that we feel really bad about ourselves. And we label ourselves a failure. We sort of have this feeling that there's something fundamentally, I can't use the words that I would usually use here, but something wrong with us. And so I think this is what we need a lot of help with, is this feeling that there's something wrong with us, that we actually are a failure because of the relationship not working out, the job not working out, or whatever it is, botched opportunities, doing something that flops, heartbreak of all kinds.